Chapter 4, Part 2 of Moonfleet. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Moonfleet by J. Mead Faulkner. Chapter 4, Part 2 of 2. In returning to the vault, I had no very sure purpose in mind. Only a vague surmise that this finding of Blackbeard's coffin would somehow lead to the finding of his treasure. But as I looked at the beard, and pondered, I began to see that if anything was to be done, it must be by searching in the coffin itself. And the clearer this became to me, the greater was my dislike to set about such a task. So I put off the evil hour, by feigning to myself that it was necessary to make a careful scrutiny of the beard, and thus wasted at least 10 minutes. But at length, seeing that the candle was burning low, and could certainly last little more than half an hour, and considering that it must now be getting near dawn, I buckled to the distasteful work of rummaging the coffin. Nor had I any need to climb up on the top shelf again, but standing on the one beneath, found my head and arms well on a level with the search. And beside that, the task was not so difficult as I had thought, for in my fall I had broken off the head end of the lid, and brought away the whole of the side that faced the vault. Now, any lad of my age, and perhaps some men too, might well have been frightened to set about such a matter as to search in a coffin, and if any had said, a few hours before, that I should ever have courage to do this by night in the moon vault, I would not have believed him. Yet here I was, and had advanced along the path of terror so gradually, and as it were foot by foot in the past night, that when I came to this final step I was not near so scared as when I first felt my way into the vault. It was not the first time either that I had looked on death, but had, indeed, always a leaning to such sights and matters, and had seen corpses washed up from the Darius and other wrecks, and besides, that had helped Ratsey to case some poor bodies that had died in their beds. The coffin was, as I have said, of great length, and the side being removed I could see the whole outline of the skeleton that lay in it. I say the outline, for the form was wrapped in a woolen or flannel shroud, so that the bones themselves were not visible. The man that lay in it was little short of a giant, measuring, as I guessed, a full 6½ feet, and the flannel having sunk in over the belly, the end of the breastbone, the hips, knees, and toes were very easy to be made out. The head was swathed in linen bands that had been white, but were now stained and discoloured with damp. But of this I shall not speak more, and beneath the chin cloth the beard had once escaped. The clutch which I had made to save myself in falling had torn away this chin band, and let the lower jaw drop on the breast. But little else was disturbed, and there was Colonel John Moon, resting as he had been laid out a century ago. I lifted that portion of the lid which had been left behind, and reached over to see if there was anything hid on the other side of the body, but had scarce let the light fall in the coffin when my heart gave a great bound, and all fear left me in a flush of success, for there I saw what I had come to seek. On the breast of this silent and swathed figure lay a locket, attached to the neck by a thin chain which passed inside the linen bandages. A wider portion of the flannel showed how far the beard had extended, but the locket and chain were quite black, though I judged that they were made of silver. The shape of this locket was not unlike a crown piece, only 3 times as thick, and as soon as I set my eyes upon it, I never doubted but that inside would be found the diamond. It was then that a great pity came over me for this thin shadow of a man, thinking rather what a fine tall gentleman Colonel Moon had once been, and a good soldier no doubt besides, than that he had wasted a noble estate and played traitor to the king. And then I reflected that it was all for the bit of flashing stone, which lay, as I hoped, within the locket, that he had sold his honour, and wished that the jewel might bring me better fortune than had fallen to him, or at any rate that it might not lead me into such miry paths. Yet such thoughts did not delay my purpose, and I possessed myself of the locket easily enough, finding a hasp in the chain, and so drawing it out from the linen folds. I had expected, as I moved the locket, to hear the jewel rattle in the inside, but there was no sound, and then I thought that the diamond might cleave to the side with damp, or perhaps be wrapped in wool. Scarcely was the locket well in my hand before I had it undone, finding a thumb nick whereby, after a little persuasion, the back, though rusted, could be opened on a hinge. My breath came very fast, and I shook so that I had a difficulty to keep my thumbnail in the nick. Yet hardly was it opened before exalted expectation gave place to deepest disappointment. For there lay all the secret of the locket disclosed, and there was no diamond, no, nor any other jewel, and nothing at all except a little piece of folded paper. Then I felt like a man who had played away all his property in stakes, his last crown, heavy hearted, yet hoping against hope that luck may turn, and that with this piece he may win back all his money. So it was for me, for I hoped that this paper might have written on it directions for the finding of the jewel, and that I might yet rise from the table a winner. But it was a frail hope, and quickly dashed. For when I had smoothed the creases and spread out the piece of paper in the candlelight, there was nothing to be seen except a few verses from the Psalms of David. The paper was yellow, and showed a lattice of folds where it had been pressed into the locket. But the handwriting, though small, was clear and neat, and there was no mistaking a word of what was there set down. 'Twas so short I could read it at once. The days of our age are 60 years and 10, and though men may be so strong that they come to 80 years, yet it is their strength then but labour and sorrow, so soon passeth it away, and we are gone. Psalm 90:21. And as for me, my feet are almost gone, my treadings are well nigh slipped. 73:6. But let not the water flood drown me, neither let the deep swallow me up. 69:11. So going through the vale of misery I shall use it for a well, till the pools are filled with water. 84:14. For thou hast made the north and the south, Tabor and Hermon shall rejoice in thy name. 89:6. So here was an end to great hopes, and I was, after all, to leave the vault no richer than I had entered it. For look at it as I might, I could not see that these verses could ever lead to any diamond, and though I might otherwise have thought of ciphers or secret writing, yet, remembering what Mr. Glennie had said, that Blackbeard after his wicked life desired to make a good end, and sent for a parson to confess him, I guessed that such pious words had been hung around his neck as a charm to keep the spirits of evil away from his tomb. I was disappointed enough, but before I left picked up the beard from the floor, though it sent a shiver through me to touch it, and put it back in its place on the dead man's breast. I restored also such pieces of the coffin as I could get at, but could not make much of it, so left things as they were, trusting that those who came there next would think that the wood had fallen to pieces by natural decay. But the locket I kept, and hung about my neck under my shirt, both as being a curious thing in itself, and because I thought that if the good words inside it were strong enough to keep off bad spirits from Blackbeard, they would also be strong enough to keep Blackbeard from me. When this was done the candle had burnt so low that I could no longer hold it in my fingers, and was forced to stick it on a piece of broken wood, and so carry it before me. But, after all, I was not to escape from Blackbeard's clutches so easily, for when I came to the end of the passage, and was prepared to climb up into the churchyard, I found that the hole was stopped, and that there was no exit. I understood now how it was that I heard talking so long after the company had left the vault, for it was clear that Ratsey had been as good as his word, and that the falling in of the ground had been repaired before the contraband men went home that night. At first I made light of the matter, thinking I should be able to dislodge this new work, and so find a way out. But when I looked more narrowly into the business I did not feel so sure, for they had made a sound job of it, putting one very heavy burial slab at the side to pile earth against it till the hole was full, and then covering it with another,